everyone. Welcome back to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm GoLocal News editor Kate Nagel. Thanks for sticking with us through the 4 o'clock hour. Usually Business Monday, we have a special guest here in town for tomorrow's panel discussion at Rhode Island College at Media in the Age of Trump. Jen Bendery, senior political writer for HuffPost, thank you for joining us
Thanks
today.
for having me.
Well, I appreciate it. It sounds like it's going to be a great panel discussion tomorrow at Rhode Island College, and you were kind of lured in by the moderator.
I was lured in by the moderator. The woman moderating our panel is Jill Agostino from the New York Times. We actually play together on a softball team in Washington, D.C., where it's female reporters against congresswomen, and it's a charity every year. So we got to know each other through that, and then she thought I'd be really good for this panel.
To come up and talk about media in the age of Trump. Now, you're a seasoned veteran. You've been with Huffington Post for 7+ years before the @roll call. So you've seen other administrations.
I have. I was there all through the Obama administration, and I covered Obama very closely. I was in the White House a lot. And then I was there for the tail end of George W. Bush. So yes, it's changed a lot since Trump has come to Washington. Quite a lot.
So, I mean, we followed him, from the vantage point being up here in Rhode Island through the campaign. I mean, let's talk about even before he took office, just his style, his approach with the media. I mean, were you surprised by anything when he actually got into the White House, having seen how he operated as a politician on the trail all along?
What's funny to me about Trump as president is that he is exactly how he was on the campaign trail. And so when people act surprised at some of the things he says as president that are false or offensive or misleading or just completely insane, people act like it's shocking that he would do this, but he literally did this throughout his entire campaign. So he, give him points for that. He is consistent as how he was on the campaign trail.
And so what's the tone and tenor of the press corps down in D.C. right now, especially those folks who have been through other administrations, not sort of the newbies who've cut their teeth on this particular president? But, from what you see both, from simply a press briefing standpoint at the White House to his tweeting and his very unconventional style of talking directly to the American voter, what's the conversations down there as we're, entering into midterms now?
Well, there's a lot more noise with Trump. There's the tweeting, there's the totally unpredictable remarks that he will make at any given moment, at any event, in any context, with any international leader present or any other kind of leader. So you're always on edge. Obama was extremely controlled, a little boring, but on message, very charming and polished. So everyone's on their toes a lot. You have to always be on watch for lies because there's so many untrue things that just get thrown out and then moved along from. So it's exhausting, and you have to be paying a lot of attention. And I think that for me, the single most important thing I've learned is to tune out the things that don't matter, because there's so many things happening right now that don't matter that Trump, I think, tries to make matter. For example, Kanye West sitting in the Oval Office last week just saying a bunch of crazy talk that made a lot of news for the day, but that should not be making a lot of news because there's real stuff going on in the world that is more important than that.
And as I've mentioned to you, I have the opportunity to catch up with Jen Lawless down at UVA Weekly, and we just talk about that politics of distraction.
Yes.
Do you think that it's premeditated on the part of the president when he doesn't maybe like where something's going and sort of the national discussion that he is trying to change it on the dime?
I think it's premeditated to a point because I don't think that he knows any differently. I think he is a pro at changing the subject to whatever he wants to talk about, and it's usually himself. And it's usually how great he is, or how great what he's doing is, or how everything's wonderful because of him. And so that's just how he operates. And I think that there's some questions about his mental health, and I mean that seriously. Like, there's some narcissistic personality disorder things going on here. And so I think he's just wired to redirect attention to himself and to things about him being a positive effect on everything around him.
One of the things that came out of the Leslie Stahl interview this week that I just got a little snippet of today. Did you see the picture that hangs up in the
Yes,
White House?
Yes, I did.
He's a cult of personality, to say the very least. And as we're approaching the midterms, you're following races around the country. So I know the focus tomorrow at the Rhode Island College panel is media in the age of Trump, but it's really everyone's focused on the midterms right now. So talk with us from your vantage point at HuffPost, what these next few weeks we'll be seeing from Jen Bendery at HuffPost.
Well, thank you for the personal attention on me. I mean, I'm juggling a lot of races right now that I'm interested in. I mean, I'm covering a governor's race in Idaho, which sounds like, why would anyone cover that? But there's a very interesting Democratic candidate right now who has a small chance of winning, but is a fascinating candidate. So there's one, but mostly I think a lot of us are focused on the House itself and the Senate itself, and are they going to flip to being Democratic? And I think the conventional wisdom right now is that we're all watching individual House races to see just how blue the House is going to flip. I mean, I'm willing to throw down $20, to bet on this. I mean, the House is going to flip Democratic. The Senate, there's a lot of speculation on that. My gut tells me it won't, but that's what a lot of us are piecing together, literally hundreds of races around the country to put together into this fixed image of what Congress will look like next year. And I'm betting Democratic House, Republican Senate. You heard it here first. That's my guess.
You've got the $20 on it. I mean, your focus all along has been, the last couple of months looking at the midterms. But I mean, how much oxygen did Brett Kavanaugh take up this sort of last month?
I have to say, I'm glad you brought that up, because I've covered Congress for 12 years-ish, and the Brett Kavanaugh fight was the ugliest, most partisan, most kind of gut-wrenching fight I have ever seen in there. It was very personal for people who have ever been affected by sexual abuse or rape. A lot of the Republicans were a bunch of old white men sitting on a panel telling a woman that she was basically lying and agreeing to push through someone who certainly sounds like he's got problems with drinking and a history of sexual assault or sexual misconduct. So watching that play out in slow motion every day across the country, I could feel so much emotion from readers would write in. I could feel it from politicians hating this process. Brett Kavanaugh exploded himself in the hearing, so it was terrible. That left a lot of bad blood in the Senate, and I think it's going to be even harder, if you can imagine it, for both parties to trust each other again and try to work together, which, if you've been following Congress and the Senate at all, you know that it's already very toxic. It just dropped down another level.
If it could not possibly fall
if you didn't think it could, it just did. I mean, that was truly the ugliest fight I've ever seen in there, and it was very depressing.
Is there any possibility, I mean, back when I was there, just slightly before, there was a mod squad. There was the last sort of bastion of folks sort of reaching across the aisles, and some members do say that they are, and some actually do more than others. But has the pendulum swung enough? Do you have any faith that it could possibly swing back to a more working Congress, if you will?
Well, I subscribe to the idea that there is a pendulum in politics. So I think personally that, yes, I think we'll get out of this at some point. And if you want to, propose a study in contrast, I mean, if you look at Obama, he really swung us left. I mean, if you think of one issue, transgender rights, for example, that was a thing that was not on people's radars. And then Obama became president, and all of a sudden the whole party is on board with transgender people's rights. Very progressive idea. We have now swung all the way back, where we're talking about white supremacists on a regular basis, and open sexism, open racism, just open hatred, white nationalists feeling empowered by this president. That is quite a swing from where we were. So I do believe we will swing back. I don't know the timeline, but I think that politics in its very nature is a pendulum, which is why I think the House will become Democratic after November. And I think something will have to swing a little bit more heading into 2020. So yes, who knows how fast the pendulum's swinging, but I think there's a swing happening. It may just be in slow-mo right now.
And so you segued into the sort of million-dollar question. You're looking at 2020. There were just some recent poll numbers pitting Trump against a few potential adversaries, including a Biden, among others. Who do you see emerging from the Democratic Party?
So this is a question I'm going to continue to poo-poo as we get closer to 2020. Here's why. Because at this point, I heard someone laughing in the back.
Peanut gallery.
In the gallery, in peanut gallery. We are now in October 2018, and as someone who lives in DC, people absolutely love to speculate on 2020. And there's certainly contenders who are absolutely positioning themselves to be presidential candidates. Elizabeth Warren, Cory Booker, Kamala Harris. I mean, you probably have seen many of these people trying to rise up. However, at this point in, let's say, the 2016 presidential election, people, let's go back further to 2008. People did not know who Obama was in October of 2006. People didn't know Donald Trump was not on the radar in what year are we?
14.
2016. He was not on the radar at this point in polling at that time. He was like not applicable, and everyone thought Jeb Bush was going to be the nominee. So I'm very reluctant to speculate on this. As a DC reporter, I'm 100% focused on the midterms because that is going to be a huge turning point for Washington politics if and when the House turns blue in November. And I think that the 2020 stuff is just pure speculation for at least another 6 months to a year. That said, if you saw today, Elizabeth Warren just rolled out a very polished video / ad that looks like she's positioning herself to run for president, and the whole ad was about how she is proud of her Native ancestry and pulled somebody into the video who actually did her genetic testing and showed that she does have Native American roots, and it's a direct jab at Trump. And he promised at a rally once that he would pay $1 million if she could prove she had any Native ancestry, and she just did. So it looks like Trump will have to pay Elizabeth Warren $1 million.
Was that his line? Was it directly to her?
I believe I don't know what he said, but I know that Elizabeth Warren's response in her video was, so since I'm correct, I would like you to donate your $1 million to an Indigenous women's, I think like Indigenous women's battered or domestic abuse center. I would like you to donate all that money to them.
Very interesting.
Or at least an Indigenous women themed affiliated group. So that's her hope for $1 million. I don't think she's gonna get it though.
So much going on in DC politics. We're lucky to have you here in studio before the panel discussion at Rhode Island College tomorrow on Tuesday. So if you're watching now, we'll be sure to put some links up if you're interested in the panel. I believe it's tomorrow afternoon, 3 p.m.?
I think it's 2 to 4.
2 to 4 at Rhode Island College with a number of other panelists as well, talking about covering Trump in America. Before I let you go, just to go back to the panel discussion at hand, there's being in the press, watching sort of what's transpiring in DC. Talk with us a little bit just about that thought of when he goes on the attack against the press and says, I'm looking to shut these particular publications down. What's the response to that? Not just from a press standpoint, from the American public. I mean, there's certainly folks who probably agree with the president on a number of issues, and then say, well, he must then be right about the New York Times' slander, the Washington Post slander. Yeah, they should shut them down. Is it a slippery slope right now?
Well, it's actually kind of scary because when you have the United States president egging on the masses to treat the media as, and these are his words, the enemy of the people or enemy of the country, that's really dangerous. And there's a lot more hyped up rhetoric that is very angry and violent, and it's directed toward the press. I personally know reporters who have been at Trump campaign rallies or now President Trump's rallies where they're in the press pen, and there's people at these rallies who will go to the press pen and throw objects at them, get in their face, push them, threaten to hurt them, and this did not happen before. And that's physically threatening now. I mean, that's really scary. So it is extremely dangerous. And the problem too is that the more he does it, the more people just accept that it's normal. And when a newspaper, for example, makes a mistake, which happens, and then they go to correct it, there's this mentality that, oh, Trump was right. They're wrong. They're all liars. It's fake news and enemy of the people. But that's not how it works. I mean, obviously, when you're in the press, you do your very best to get the facts straight. And if you make a mistake, you run a correction, and it's very transparent. Trump will take that and turn it into something to underline his message that all media is the enemy and lying. And of course, he lies all the time, and we fact check him, and there's no comment from him when we fact check him. And I'm talking literally thousands of lies have been documented by him. New York Times has a running list. So it's a dangerous place to be as a free press. And I get a lot more hate mail personally saying, I'm the enemy, and it's just the new reality right now. And we just have to do our best to keep our heads down and present the facts and push back on him every single time that he's lying or just straight up misleading people for his own gain.
Well, I'm sure you're going to have a few stories to tell folks tomorrow, like here in the studio today at Rhode Island College, again, for the panel discussion on media in the era of Trump. But Jen Bendery with HuffPost, thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Glad we could bring you this end of the show segment here in the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. And of course, we'll be back here tomorrow on Tuesday back starting at 3 p.m. Be sure to read GoLocalProb.com and catch us on Facebook. In the meantime, we look forward to seeing you here tomorrow.